I am primarily going to be focusing today on the in-person type of interview or the virtual on-site type of interview. So this is after you've passed the phone screen. Now I do have tips if we have time at the end. I do have tips that we can discuss about how to interview for a phone screen. But you know, we're really going to just dive into this to the on-site and virtual on-site interview. So to get started, I want to talk about one of the very most important things that you can bring into an interview, and it's honesty. So honesty is so important. You want to be completely honest about your skills, your background. However, I'm going to give it with a caveat. You want to be confident. So there's two different ways you could be honest. You could say something to the effect, oh, Raji, could you go to the other meeting? It looks like I sent out that the Teams one and invite Julia to come to this one. I added her to my to yours on Teams. Would you mind doing that, Raji?
Yeah, Anita, I'll take care of it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So honesty is so important, but you want to be confident. So you could be honest in two different ways. One thing you could do is you could be like, well, yeah, I've never done that before. And if you answer that way, most likely you're not going to make a very big impression. So that's one way to be honest, is honest without confidence. But the other way that you could be honest, like if someone asks you if there's something that and you haven't done it before, you could say, well, you know, I really don't have any experience in that area. However, I've read about it. I've studied it a little bit. I haven't used it yet, but I've studied it. And I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of it, and I would love the opportunity to work with it. If this is something that is important to this position, I'd be more than happy to put in extra hours or do whatever I can to bring myself up to speed. Now, if you saw the two different ways of being honest, contrasting, one was confident and assertive, and the other one was kind of mealy-mouthed and not really assertive and looking down a lot and so forth. So you really want to be honest, but you want to bring in confidence into every presentation, and you can consider interviewing, you're presenting yourself. Now,
Shirley, hi, Shirley.
All right, maybe everyone can go on mute. So, so that is how I recommend that we start every interview, and bring into every interview is complete honesty. Now, especially if you are interviewing in person, but even when you're interviewing on video, you want to make sure your hygiene is good. Well, I'm on video. What does it matter if I smell or not? Well, the thing is that your confidence is going to be projecting through your video, through the camera. So whether you're in person or whether you're interviewing on a Zoom or a Teams or a WebEx call, you want to make sure that you're presentable, that you've brushed your teeth, you've taken a shower, you've done your hair, you're dressed. You know, I'm here at 6 o'clock at night in my home, and I'm wearing a suit. So because I'm here for to talk about interviewing. So that confidence, when you present yourself, and when you feel confident about yourself, when you know you've taken care of everything, and you're treating your virtual interviews just like you would treat an in-person interview, it's really going to carry through in the way you present yourself over the video, over the waves, over the internet waves. So you want to make sure not only have you showered, you've brushed your teeth, you've combed your hair, all those good things, but you also want to make sure that you're dressed professionally, and you want to dress better than the people who are interviewing you. They may be coming to you in jeans and a t-shirt, but you're the one being interviewed. Now you are interviewing them, but you're really interviewing them like, do I want to work here, etc. There's no expectation that they dress nicely, but there's a complete expectation that you dress nicely. And I'm in high tech, and I do interviews almost every day. Some days we do tons of interviews and some days we have a lot less, but one of the things I've noticed lately with these virtual on-site interviews is that people come with shabby hair, and you can tell they're just wearing like some old ragged t-shirt or their sweatpants. And I'm actually fairly appalled that so many people are treating interviews over the internet, like over Zoom, over calls. They can still see you. So, this is my recommendation. I never say anything. I just let the teams make their own decision. But I do highly recommend that you, whether it's in person or over the internet, that you make sure that you're dressed professionally. Now, another thing I wanted to discuss with you is actually about verbiage, being succinct. This is something I actually have to work very hard at. And so I've come up with a couple of strategies that can help. One of them is to really know your background. You need to go through your background. You need to understand your background. You need to understand every aspect of the background. If you worked on a project, if you say you have JavaScript, then when they ask a JavaScript question, you should be able to come up with the answer. You shouldn't be stumbling. Anything on your resume is fair game, and really anything in the job description is also fair game. So those are the two areas I ask people to prepare on: is prepare understanding your background and prepare understanding what you're interviewing for. But with the succinctness, you want to explain down to a certain level and then say, would you like me to go, would you like me to explain further? Do you want me to dig a little deeper? Would you like me to explain that a little more? You basically want to say something to the effect that they will understand that you know more. So you're being succinct, but you're not being so brief that they think you don't know anything. So I read feedback all the time, and that is one of the things that people comment is they didn't really seem to go deep into it. I have a feeling they don't really understand this. They they just brushed over it. I would have expected someone who did that for 15 years would be able to say more about it. So you want to show in your interview that you're able to actually layer down and dig deeper, and that your knowledge is deep and it's not just surface level knowledge, like it's not just a buzzword. So so those are some of the kind of beginning, like coming to the interview is come with that kind of mind frame. Come with the mind frame that I'm going to talk about my background. I'm going to go deep. I'm going to be professional. I'm going to be dressed nice. All of that will carry into the interview so that they will receive you more positively. Now we're going to talk about body language. Body language is a little bit difficult when it comes to the virtual field, but it's still definitely very present. So I'm going to give you a couple of hints. So first of all, if you happen to be interviewing in person, let's talk about the handshake. I wish I could have you guys all in a room and each of you just shake each other's hands so we could role play this. It's okay though. We're just going to go with what we have. So there's two kinds of handshakes that you don't want to do. The first one is limp fish handshake. You never want to give the limp fish handshake. That's the handshake where there's like no muscle behind it. Your hand is basically kind of wimpy. You don't want to give that because it really shows it's going to say something about you, and it could say that you're not very confident and you don't get things done. It could say that. It doesn't have to. It also might say that you're scared to death and don't have a lot, have difficulty talking to people. Like it could say all of those things. So you want to make sure that you're you have presence with your handshake. And the second kind is you don't want to have the handshake that is like the claw jawbreaker crush your hand handshake. I've had both those kinds of handshakes. Both of them are unpleasant. So the way you do a perfect handshake, and I'm going to just do it on myself, we'll just try to pretend, is you make sure when and you just have to imagine, because I can't do it on myself and have my hands be at the right angle, but you want to make sure that this part of your hand connects, and then you wrap your hand gently around their other hand, and just imagine it's the other direction because you're shaking like that. You wrap their fingers around like this, and then you give them a gentle squeeze. You don't give them and you test it, because now some people will have very thin hands and they'll kind of collapse. So gentle squeeze is enough, and then they feel that you're there. They feel that you're present and you're They feel that warmth from you. They feel that kind of that friendliness in your personality. But if they have a thicker hand, some people have very thick, firm hands. With those people, you want to give them a little harder squeeze. So just make sure you're coming here, you're touching like that, your fingers are wrapping around, and then you just give them a little squeeze. So that is the handshake. And again, if we were in person, we would role play that a few times. The next thing is,
oh, sorry, just a quick question. I haven't shook anyone's hand in 2 years. Is that's okay to do now?
So I found that it is, I haven't gone on any interviews, but I have gone to many social events. Like Raji Red was sharing about my background. I have a church community, and in the church community, I noticed that people are shaking hands again. However, you could do an elbow bump or a fist bump. Okay. And you could even say, hey, I used to shake hands, but do you mind? I just like to do a fist bump, and do it with a smile, do it with pleasantness, so that it's really warm. It's like a way of connecting. So if you're not comfortable with the handshake, that's perfectly, hey, hey, good to meet you. Hey, good to meet you. But in the business world, handshakes are still, the church I go to is actually an Asian church, and even there, very highly afraid of germs and stuff, but even there, I see handshakes happening all the time right now. So
okay. Great, thanks.
Yeah. So eye contact. At the beginning of an interview, I usually like to have people say, hey, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take some notes while we're talking, and I have some questions here that I might like to ask later. I just wanted to let you know, because if I'm looking down, I'm just going to be writing some notes referring to my notes. And so always have a clean notepad with you, whether you're on a phone interview, a virtual interview, or an on-site interview. The pad of paper will give you some place to look, so that when you're breaking contact, instead of looking like this, like sometimes people are a little uncomfortable looking others right in the eye. You may be one of those kinds of people, or you may notice that the person that is interviewing you is having a hard time making direct eye contact. Eye contact is so important, though, even if they're having a little difficulty or you're having difficulty. So by bringing a pad of paper, and usually I like the top sheet to be blank, and then if you have questions, have it be on the second sheet. And that way, if you're in an in-person interview, that way the interviewer isn't trying to read your questions upside down, and you can ask them when it's appropriate to ask. But having that pad of paper gives you a way of breaking eye contact without it being weird or awkward. You're not looking up, you're not looking at your feet, you're not looking over there. You're looking at them, you're looking at the pad of paper, you're looking at them, you're looking at the pad of paper. And that's what the interview should really look like. Now, if you have one of those computers where your computer is here and your camera is over here, you may really want to consider bringing your camera to align with your computer somewhere over top of it, just because, especially for interviews, just because it does make such a big difference as to whether you can look up or in the general direction of where the camera is or not. So so eye contact, you don't want to stare them down. So if I were to go and just really listen, but I'm staring at you, so focused, you might, even though I usually don't make people uncomfortable, you might actually get uncomfortable from that. So that's one of the reasons why you want to make sure that you're breaking eye contact a little bit, but kind of judge your audience a little bit. So and then Nicole says that staring weirds her out. Yeah, and staring weirds a lot of people out. So so giving eye contact, but also having a little bit of relief is really good. Posture, even when you're here virtually, they can't really see you. They can't necessarily see how you're sitting in your seat. You're going to find when you have good posture, when you're sitting up straight, when your shoulders are back, you're going to actually feel more confident. And feeling confident goes so far in actually being able to portray that. The more confident you feel, the more confident you're going to occur to other people. It also will show, I would say, is somewhere in there a little bit of trustworthiness. People feel like they can trust people who are showing themselves to like have good control over their posture, good control over their body. When people slouch a lot, there's like, it's kind of a subliminal thing, or like not subliminal, like in the back of your subconscious. It's a subconscious thing, like in the back of your mind, certain things that you might portray may say to the viewer, oh, this person can't be trusted. Oh, this person doesn't follow through. Oh, this person doesn't. And then other things might say, look at this person. They really like to get things done. They, they're a pleasant person to work with. I really like working with them. So, these kinds of things will help carry that subconscious feeling that the interviewer is going to have of you. So posture, be relaxed. If you're walking into the interview, walk confidently, walk relaxed. When you first walk in and greet them, you just, I just say, walk right up and say, hi, great to meet you. I've been looking forward to meeting you. And if it's on a call like this, on a Zoom interview, hey, thanks for taking the time to interview with me. I've been looking forward to this. I really appreciate it. And that's another thing is confidence. Confidence can also be heard in your voice and in your smile. So you want to make sure that you are using that smile. They can hear that, and not just confidence. They can hear the friendliness. They can hear the teamwork, the teamworkability that you bring to the table. I know I just made that up right there, teamworkability. But your ability to work with others, they can feel it from things like this. So definitely make sure you're smiling in the interview. Make sure that you're whether it's on the call, that you can't, especially if it's on a phone call and they can't see you, but even in the interview, it's painful, honestly, for me to interview people who never smile in an interview. I mean, I'm just waiting for them to crack a little, like show that that they have a human side, show that they have a worm's side, show that I'm going to enjoy talking to them, at lunch between meetings, So you want to make sure that people get that about you. It's not just sternness and strictness and, like a harsh exterior, because they're going to think, okay, this person knows what they're doing, but I don't know if I want to work with them. Mirroring is something that is hard to do. This is another thing that is really a key component, and it's harder to do in the virtual environment. But mirroring is where you're basically reflecting back the ambiance that they're presenting, the body language they're presenting. So if you have someone who's sitting back in their chair a little bit and they're interviewing you, let me just see if I can put this monitor. They're interviewing you and they look like they're kind of sitting back a little. You don't want to be like this. You don't want to be like so like up in the screen, I guess. You want to sit back a little, kind of mirror what they're doing. If their posture is a little more relaxed, you be a little more relaxed. If they're a little more intense, move forward a little bit, be a little more intense. Naturally in the real world, if we're not interviewing on Zoom, actually just in the real world period, whether you're interviewing in person or whether you're interviewing on Zoom, like if you go to a board meeting and you have 20 people in a room and one person sneezes or coughs, you'll find that several people around the room will start coughing, clearing their throat. If you find one person leans back and crosses a leg, half of the room it's going to be like a domino effect. Half the room within 5 minutes, maybe even less than that, maybe within 2 minutes of one person leaning back and crossing their leg, you're going to have like 60 or 70% of that room lean back and cross their leg. If they're noticed, especially if they're up at the front or if they're the ones that are talking. It's just what happens in groups or with people is that we mirror each other. And so, think of it like this. You're talking to a friend about your favorite movie or about going to the beach. And you're like, oh, I did this and I did that. And your friend is going to go, oh, really? Wow. Hey, tell me about it. And they're going to show that. They're going to show that enthusiasm. They're not going to be like with you going, oh, I did this and that. And they're not going to go, yeah, okay, huh. They're not going to be completely devoid of reaction. So mirroring is a way that you can you can actually, it's a way of breaking ice without doing anything, without saying anything. So you break the ice through your body language. So yes, exactly. So, and Nicole also, thank you, Nicole. It's a way of connecting. When you mirror someone and you mirror kind of their enthusiasm and their energy. And here's a note on lack of energy. Sometimes you interview with people who don't have a lot of energy, and maybe you're very energetic. I'm very energetic. So in those kinds of interviews, I need to tailor down my, bring my energy down just a little bit so I can match them a little better, so I can mirror them, mirror where they're at. And then what I do is I purposefully bring them up to a higher level. And how do I do that? I just engage with them. I might ask them a question. I might go, oh, wow, hey, how did you do this? What do you like most about it? And really get them to be talking a little bit so their energy goes up. I don't like to leave people in that, if they come into an interview with me, whether they're an interviewer or an interviewee, I don't like to leave them in a kind of a low level of energy. I want them to be a little more animated so that I can actually connect with them. And so mirroring does help with that. And so, you know, again, we talked about it at the beginning with honesty. We talked about it with the personal appearance and hygiene and all of that. And we're going to talk about it with the body language, is that bringing confidence into your interview really will go far. It's going to give people the security that they can trust you, that they can, that whatever you're saying is going to be true. And so establishing that connection and that confidence is definitely important. Now, I already mentioned a way that I would highly recommend every time you meet with someone, especially when it's the manager, but even when it's the individuals. Oh, hi, Raji, I've been looking forward to meeting you. Hi, Mary Lou, I've been looking forward to meeting you. Hi, Vijay, I've been looking forward to meeting you. Hi, Nicole, I've been looking forward to meeting you. So always begin your interview with basically like a thank you. You could even say it. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me today. I've been looking forward to meeting you. So you're expressing happiness and joy in meeting with them in just kind of simple phrases, and thanks and thankfulness, gratitude. There's a question that interviewers often ask, especially inexperienced interviewers, but pretty much they just ask it. And it's a terrible question. It's the worst question that you can ask, but it happens all the time. People will say, so tell me about yourself. And what happens is that people who aren't really understanding that you can't answer that question, what they'll say is they'll start talking about, maybe they'll talk about something personal, or maybe they'll talk about their last project. Or in one of, I had a candidate once who the manager started, tell me about yourself. And so he started talking about one thing, and the manager's like, oh, and the manager told me this after the interview. He said that the first things he said, the guy was like, wow, I want to hire this guy. He was ready to hire my candidate right there. This is when I was in the agency world. And he said the guy kept talking, and he talked himself into the job and right back out of the job. You cannot answer that question. Never answer the question, tell me about yourself. What you want to say is something to the effect, and I recommend that you just memorize, Raji will send you out some tips at the end of this, and you can memorize anything in blue. I recommend that you just memorize it word for word. I would love to. Where would you like me to begin? Because here's the thing, you don't want to answer the question. What if they wanted to find out about your some hobbies, and they were kind of saying that like on a personal basis, and you answered about work, and now they feel disconnected to you. They didn't get that connection because they were kind of mentally thinking, hey, I want to know more about this person. But what if they wanted to know about your last project, and you start talking about your trip to Taiwan, or your trip to Hawaii, or to Greece, right? So you can't answer that question. It's not a good question. So you have to answer that question with a question. I'd love to. Where do you want me to begin? Now, once that's kind of bringing us right into the interview, and right about at this point, they actually start talking to you about your past experience. And so the way an interview is going to go, it's going to be about 80% them talking and asking you questions, and you responding, and maybe up to 20% you asking them questions. So your opportunity in an interview is to ask them questions, but you don't want to do that at the beginning. Unless they give you the opportunity at the beginning and you have something pressing that you know if you don't ask it now, it's going to be pressing on your mind the whole time. You want to wait until a little later. You want to, usually I would say, yeah, I might have a couple of questions. I'd like to, let's start talking, and maybe I can, give you some of my questions at the middle or the end, if that works for you. Unless you have a bunch of questions, but there runs a risk if you ask the questions first of you never getting to the interviewer's questions. And if that happens, the feedback is going to look something like, they couldn't stay focused, we never got to the questions, I wasn't able to interview them. And so you just want to make sure that you give them time to interview you first, and then you interview them at the end. So I would say, again, about 80% them answering, you responding, and then about 20% closer to the end of you asking and seeing what their responses are. So usually what they're going to do is they're going to ask you questions about your background. So especially if you work at a company that you don't, that isn't well known, or if you work in a company that's well known, but it has a lot of different product lines, you might mention, oh, I work at NVIDIA and I am on the hardware recruiting team. And what, one of the things I work with is I work with DFT engineers or ASIC engineers. And I usually like to recommend that people keep in mind what the company is that you're interviewing for and what is important to them. How do you know? You read through the job description and you study up on the company before the interview. And that way, anything that you do say about your company, you want to just be very brief, like one line about what you do or what that company does. So usually, like if people don't know what NVIDIA is, I might say that NVIDIA is it is most known as a semiconductor company, but it is really a full solution hardware software company. I might say something like that, for instance. And I work on the hardware side, working with XYZ technology. So you want to make sure that that you give them just like one line about the company. And you could ask them, oh, how much do you know about NVIDIA? Do you want me to tell you what they do before I tell you about my background? And that would be completely right there in line with how to be succinct, but yet give enough information so that you're not leaving your interviewer kind of wanting. So the first thing is the product industry. The next thing you want to talk about is your role. What do you do? Are you an individual contributor? Are you a lead? Are you a manager? If you are a lead or a manager, you might talk about, well, I'm actually the manager. I manage a team of 8 people, or I'm the lead of 7 people. And then you want to talk about the tasks. What are your actual responsibilities? So what are you responsible for? And with this, I'm going to give one of the no-nos. Do not say we do this, we do that, we do this. Interviews that go like that, at the end of the interview, when people use the word we a lot, the interviewer will go, well, gosh, what does that person actually do? Everything seems to be about we, and I don't know if that person can even carry their own weight. So you want to talk about I. You can talk about the group and the project you're working on, but you want to say, I achieved this, I delivered that, I generated this, I directed that, I initiated this, I launched that. You use action words and you use the I tense, not the we tense. With the action words, I actually have a list of great action words that Raji will send out. It's in the interview tips. So just in case you're not used to action words, I've put together a few to give you an idea to kind of get you started. Then you want to talk about the tools. What kind of software do you use? What kind of operating systems are you on? Is there a hardware or software involved in your job? So it all depends on what kind of job you have as to what kind of tools you have, right? So if you're working as an accountant, you might use this kind of software or this kind of software. Maybe you've used a couple of different softwares. So those are some of the things that you're going to talk about. If you're working as an engineer, and let me just see. Yes, I always recommend that you say send a thank you note. Sometimes you don't have the interviewer's information, but you can send it to the recruiter, whoever the recruiter was, or the coordinator that set you up. So thank you notes are excellent. Now, here's the key with thank you notes is being specific. You know, I would actually say one general thank you note to the entire group. Not great, but one thank you note to this person, to that person, or to that person might be a little better, especially if there's something unique that you wanted to share. Hey, Mary Lou, I really enjoyed our talk, especially what you were sharing with me about this. When I got off the phone, or when I got off our call, I remembered this, and this, and I thought of you. That it was really great that you shared that insight or something. So a little bit of personalness is good with thank you notes, but let's get back to this. So mentioning the tools that you're using, meaning the technology that you have to use to get your job done. And if you're a programmer or an engineer, then you need to know exactly what are your core skills. And you need to be able to speak to everything on your resume technically. It doesn't matter who you are. Everything that is on your resume, you should be able to speak to it. But if you say, I program in JavaScript, you need to be prepared in that interview to do a JavaScript code. Anything that is on your resume is fair game. So I recommend that you prepare yourself as such. Now, they may never ask you anything. It's fine, but you want to be prepared and not be one of those people who's kind of left like a deer with the headlights. If they say, oh, well, can you do this in Python, create this in Python, and you're just like, I don't remember. So in those cases, why is it on your resume? Maybe you need to have if there's a point that you don't know much, maybe you can just say, I've worked with these technologies. You might say at the beginning of the interview, oh, anything from here on, I would need to do a little bit of ramp up again. I haven't used it in such a long time. I just don't remember, but I could ramp up pretty quickly. So just give them some kind of a disclosure, I guess, but I just recommend prepare. So another thing you want to do is be prepared to talk about the contributions. What are the results? What did you accomplish? What's the release, the life cycle, the challenges? Always come to an interview with at least one technical challenge and one human challenge. So one technical challenge, how did you solve this problem? And one human challenge, there was this kind of conflict. How did you solve this conflict? People want to know how you think about things, how you process things, how you manage things in conflict times. And so it's very good to come prepared with at least one or two stories on that. Now, one of the things I started with today was how to overcome technical weaknesses. I actually recommend that each person memorizes this word for word. And I'm just gonna tell you what I told you earlier. Like, if let's say someone says, hey, Anita, do you program in HTML? I really don't have any professional experience in programming in HTML. However, I've read about it, and I think I have a pretty good overall understanding of it, and I'd love the opportunity to work with it. If this was something that was important to this position, I'd be more than happy to work extra hours or do whatever I can to bring myself up to speed. Now, the first time I did these interview tips with someone, I had them memorize it with me word for word. They role played it a bunch of times. I told them to go home and memorize it word for word. They did the interview like 1 or 2 days later, and the manager called me and he said, when I asked so-and-so about, and I forget what it was, maybe he knew C++ and not Java. Or something. He didn't know, whatever it was, that he didn't know it. But when he said, I don't have any experience in that area, but I would love to work on it, and I do whatever it takes to bring myself up to speed. Man, we need more people like that here. I want to make that guy an offer. So this one thing alone can get you the job. With that candidate, he had gone through a couple of interviews through me and had bombed them. And I knew he was good. I had interviewed him myself. I understood his background, and I thought, wow, this guy just can't interview. And so that's the first time I did a bunch of research on interviewing. I studied up, and then I taught this guy what I learned. And this was one of the things I told him to memorize. and he got the job because of that. So that is how like sweet it can be. If you know, knowing your weaknesses, knowing your strengths, understanding the job, and being prepared for questions like that where they come up and you just don't know. But if you have the right answer, it doesn't matter. You know, people are going to hire you for your future capability as much as for your present skill. If they can see that you have the ability to take on new things, if they can see that you have the kind of mindset that is a match for their environment, like you're a go-getter, you're gonna bring stuff to you, they're gonna want to hire you regardless of whether you have that one skill or not. So here's another area that you can shine. So many interviewers do not ask questions, and asking questions is one of the most important parts of the interview. So, you know, we talked about them kind of like mentally putting you aside. Another area that I read feedback all the time, and I see it all the time. When I asked the interviewer if they had questions, they said, "I have no questions for you." Like it's a negative. Interviewers are looking for people who are smart. Interviewers are looking for people who are curious, who are gonna want to ask not only questions about what what the job is, but just, you know, be curiously minded so that you can draw things to you. They want to know that. So you want to ask questions in a couple of different areas. So the first area that you want to ask questions are going to be around the job. So they might be like, what are some of the day-to-day responsibilities of this job? What are some of the biggest technical challenges that you're facing? What kinds of things can I expect to get done in the first 6 months or in the first year? How do you hope that this hire impacts your organization? These are all questions about the job that will help you understand the job and help you decide if you want the job. But it will also, on the other side, the interviewer will be like, wow, this person's pretty intelligent. These are some really good questions. You also want to ask questions about the company and the organization. Well, how does this organization fit into the rest of the company? Well, you know, where is this company going in the next year or in the next 5 years? What are some of the short-term and long-term objectives of the company? Who are your competitors? You know, questions like this. What markets are you in? You know, I know you're in this and this. Are there any other markets that you're in that I don't know about? You know, so questions like that show them that you have researched them. It shows them that you're interested in them. It shows them that you're a thinker. The last type of question you could definitely want to ask. So I would ask anywhere between 2 to 3 questions about the position, 1 to 2 questions about the market and the company, where the company is going, and then 1 question that is kind of a culture question. And then even if you don't have time for any other question, and I'm going to give you a couple of culture questions, and then I want to give you the most important question you can ask in an interview. It's the $1 million question. So let's give you a couple of culture questions, and then we're going to go to the $1 million question. You're going to love it. So the $1 million, the culture questions. So some good, if you're talking to an individual contributor, what do you like working? What do you like best about working here? What's your favorite thing about NVIDIA? I work at NVIDIA, so I'll use NVIDIA. What's your favorite thing about NVIDIA? What do you like working? What's your favorite thing about the team? What do you like about the team? Or if you're talking to a manager, you might say something like, what are some of the characteristics that make people successful here? So manager is going to tell you all the characteristics that they're looking for. When you say what makes people successful here, they're going to tell you the things that are most important to them. And you should write those down because you want to know what's important to your manager. And you could ask a manager, why do you like working here? But you could also say, describe your ideal employee. You know, what does an ideal employee look like? What are some of the things that make them successful? So here it is. The $1 million question. Oh, I like that. Marty just put his favorite question. Is what have I not asked that I missed? I'm not going to go back and scroll. So Marty, I'm just paraphrasing now. What have I not asked that I should ask? So that's the paraphrase. You can go to the chat to see the actual question. So that's another great question. Like maybe you're at the end and you're like, what should I have asked you that I haven't asked you yet? You know, let them come up with the question and the answer. But here's the $1 million question. And you don't want to say it in any other way. So if you're taking notes right now, write this down word for word. How do you see me fitting in? You ask it with a smile, not like a big goofy smile. You don't say anything before, you don't say anything after. You just say, how do you see me fitting in? And you're going to get 3 kinds of responses. The first kind of response is the safe response. Well, I don't know. I need to get back and we're going to discuss it with the team and, you know, we'll get back to you. Don't worry about that response. Don't you worry one bit. I'll tell you why in a second, but here's the second type of response. So you'll either get kind of a veiled, I'm not going to tell you, but thanks for asking kind of response, or they're going to tell you, well, you know what, you know, I like your attitude. You seem like you have a really good, you know, good grasp of this, but, you know, we're really looking for someone who knows JavaScript. Oh yeah, you know, I don't know JavaScript. However, I have been wanting to learn JavaScript for a little while, and that's actually why I applied to this job. And if this was something that was important to this position, I would be more than happy to work extra hours, take some classes, do whatever I could to bring myself up to speed. So the last thing, so they'll either not answer you, they'll give you an objection like why you don't fit, and then the last one is going to be, well, you know, actually you are a really good fit for X, Y, and Z. So you want to ask that question because it's like buying a car. If you go out with a salesperson, you're car shopping, hopefully everyone has been car shopping for a new car at least once in their life, or even a used car at least once in your life where you've actually gone and test driven it. Or maybe it's like dating too, but anyway, we'll use the car example. So you're test driving the car, and in your mind, you know, you're just driving along, and then they say, so what do you think of this car? How do you like it? It has some pretty good get up and go, right? I have been on a few test drives. I have never answered the person like this. I have never said, oh wow, yeah, I love the get up and go of this V6 diesel Jeep, man. This is amazing. Never said it. It's okay, not bad. So I don't give away my cards. Why would they, right? But the second that guy asked me if I was test driving the car, and at that moment I'm thinking about my kid in school, and I'm thinking about what I have to do tonight and the groceries I have to buy, I'm actually not going to be paying attention to the car. I'm going to be paying attention to something else. So if they ask me this question, what do you think about this car? It has some pretty good get up and go. The second that they ask me that is the second that I imagine owning it. The second that you say, how do you see me fitting in, is the second that they actually imagine you in that chair next to them working with them. So in that moment, they may or may not respond, but they, in that moment, actually put you in that driver's seat. They put you in that chair and they imagine working with you. And so this question alone can give you an 80% better success rate at interviewing and getting the job by just asking it, because they might have interviewed 10 people and they've gone through those interviews so quickly that those have just stacked up. But here on this one interview with you, you said, how do you see me fitting in? And they took the time while you were still there, while you still had an opportunity to answer for weaknesses. So that's the other thing, is if you don't ask this question and there's a weakness, you can't come back later. Oh, well, but I'll work extra hours, I'll study, I'll do whatever it takes. It's not going to work. But if you do it there, then you have the opportunity. You want to ask every single person that you interview, because then you have an opportunity to discuss in further detail or to defend anything you don't know, and what your plans would be to bring yourself up to speed. So how do you see me fitting in? Don't say it any other way. And then at the end of the interview, here's what I would say is, it's better to have an option than not an option. You may or may not know at this point in the interview. You still may need to do a little more research. You may not know if you want to go work with them. You may have heard something and you're still vetting them and still deciding, do I want to come to this company? But you're in the interview and you're with them now. You need to make sure that every person that you talk to knows you're interested. It's better to have a job and say no to it than to have nothing. So here's how you would say it in a really awesome way. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. This is the kind of opportunity I have been looking for, and I think I could make a valuable contribution. I look forward to the next time we meet. It's clean, it's simple, it's letting them know you're interested, and it just like leaves it open for the next time you talk with them. So those are the my basic interview tips. I'll have Raji send those out. There are some advanced tips for management interviews I'm not going to discuss right now, but I wanted to leave the last couple minutes open for questions. So let's see if I can expand my view here.
Yeah, there are a few questions in the chat, Anita.
Okay, awesome.
I think you've answered a couple of them already.
I was able to read some of them, but I'm sure I missed a whole bunch. I didn't get to see everything.
So there was a question from Mary Lou, which is about how do we answer the question about what is your weakness?
Actually, Mary Lou, can you give me one of your weaknesses? Because I'd like to go with a real thing.
Impatience.
Impatient. Okay. You know, one of my weaknesses is impatience. I just love running to that finish line, working on a project, and I can't wait to dig in. I can't wait to get my teeth into the meat and to figure out what the problems are. And sometimes, my enthusiasm and my desire to do a really great job can be a little bit of a negative too. I get so enthusiastic and so excited that I might come across as a little bit rushed or impatient. It's really it's something that I'm working on managing. I'm just so excited about life, and I have so much passion for what I do.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's such a positive spin on our weakness. Thank you for that, Anita.
So with weaknesses, I mean, you want to be real about your weaknesses, but at the same time, you should know your weaknesses. They should be weaknesses that you're actually actively working on. I mean, don't be there with a weakness that you're just like letting go. I know I write long emails and I can talk a lot, and I have to constantly stop myself before sending emails. I reread them, I make them more succinct, I make them more succinct again. And that's just one of my weaknesses. And then I know what I have to do to manage it. And sometimes I'm not very good at it. And a lot of times I am now. I've been working on it for a while. So know your weaknesses, but also know what the positive part of that weakness is. Understand. So every weakness is also a strength. Every weakness is something that was good that went bad. And you want to find the good that went bad before and not just focus on the negative. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
Maybe, I don't know, laziness. You can take a little rest for yourself a little too far. So I guess that's, I don't know if I could spin laziness into one, but most weaknesses like, working too hard, there's all sorts of weaknesses, and most of them are just positive weaknesses that people took a little overboard. Any other questions?
Yes, there was one more question, which was about answering a question with a question. Yeah, are there any particular ways to frame while you're responding back to a question with a question?
Well, Raji, do you think that there are any particular ways I should answer a question with a question? What do you think?
Okay, just giving them the opportunity.
So, here's the thing is, if you don't understand something, or if you want to make sure that you understand the question, it is good. It's actually very good to repeat the question back. So, so what you would say is, so what I hear you're saying is you're wondering if I know how to respond to a question with a question. Is that what you're saying? So
sorry.
that's an example of how. So if there's a question and I'll answer a question with a question. If I need to make sure I heard the question correctly and I'm answering the correct question. I did it with you just now a minute ago to kind of play, right? But you know, you could rephrase a question too. You could say, so you want to know what the strongest kind of tire material is? Yeah, that's an interesting question. Let me tell you a little bit about what my research has said. Or, you know, so you can answer a question with a question, but you want to go somewhere with it. You don't just want to leave it there. So it's either to get more clarification, to make sure that you're going in the right direction, or to phrase to kind of like end cap, you know, or to be, you know, put the end cap, at least the beginning cap on the end cap of what you're about to say.
Got it. Lipping, does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yeah, actually, it's a little harsher for me. Definitely, what you answered helps, Anita. And originally, it's hard for me to ask a question. I mean, to answer the question. Basically, for some questions, you want to say no, or something as what you mentioned, not really good question for the interview. And so I want to learn some tips, like how am I going to direct myself to another question? I know it's not a very clear question. Sorry.
Liping, do you have any questions that you have gotten stumped on before?
Yes. It's like some interview questions. I mean, maybe the position is not really good, but like I think it's I don't know. It's some questions with my answer, when I try to answer the question, it leads to somewhere else I don't like. Sorry, I don't have it on top of my mind right now. Maybe it's just a generally, maybe, I mean, that's okay. But that's a good direction you give me already. What I
yeah, I would say the biggest thing, Liping, is to make sure when you answer a question with a question that you're using it to basically make sure you're going to answer the right question, that you understand what they're saying. So if you've been finding that you're saying something, but it's not being received on the other end the way you want to say it, maybe you notice that they take it wrong. You might clarify the question and just say, so you're asking me about this. Do you want to know about this part or about this part? Which part are you asking me about? Because I could talk about either. So just trying to like define it a little better, and that way you're answering the right question. Another thing that I would recommend with those notes that you have that notepad right there on your table or right there with you. So you can have questions in advance, and then you can write down questions that you have, and then you know, look at your notepad so that you can make sure that you're actually, you know, covering everything. So maybe you have a question and you want to write that down and just say, oh, you know, I did have a question about this. Or, oh, when you said this, I didn't understand what you meant. Did you mean this or that? Or can you explain that a little more? So it's just really making sure that you're understanding what they're saying and making sure that your response is in accordance with what they're looking for.
So very focused on the interaction. Any moment, it's not very on the track, just try to pause and ask questions.
Yeah, direct the conversation maybe.
Yeah, it's really making sure that you and the other person are on the same page and that you're actually responding with what they're looking for. You know, that's another thing I see in interview feedback is that there's a disconnect. I asked them this. I don't know why they were talking about that.
Got you. Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Nothing on the chat, but I did have a question. Anita, are there any top 3 things that an interviewer must not do at an interview? Any top 3 things that you would have seen in feedback that are like a no, like being very conscious that people generally end up doing because they're not paying attention to?
I mean, I've talked about some of the things that you should and shouldn't do in the interview during my chat, but I would say let's see. I would say don't talk about compensation. Don't be all, a lot of people get kind of uppity about it. Oh, well, what are you guys going to pay? Well, they don't know yet. They're interviewing you to see where you fit in. How can, you know, you can ask for a range. You could, you know, ask the HR person. You don't want to ask. So individual contributors, you should never talk about money with, or concerns necessarily with. You should talk with the HR person and with the manager, if you have questions like that. So, and then actually that leads to a question like, how do you answer what your compensation expectations are? Like, what if you say something that's too high and they're not interested, or you say it's too low and you're not giving yourself enough value, and they could have paid you better. So one of the things that I recommend, that's one of the areas that come up quite a bit, is with compensation. Ask the HR person what the range is for the position. And you could ask the manager. Managers don't always know. I would ask the HR person. So have the salary discussions with the HR person. And then when they ask you, well, what are you looking for? How much do you want? You know, well, I want to be flexible. You know, maybe you can give me a better understanding of the range for this position. You know, what I'm really looking for is something that is the fair market value for my background, but I'm not really sure what the fair market value for my background is right now. What are you guys looking for? And then if you're actually in the negotiations for an offer, you really should give them your bottom line. Like you might say, you know, I'm looking for 150,000. I might be flexible if the stock was sufficient and the whole package looked good for 140, but I'm really looking for 150 to 160. So, you know, so don't, you don't want to go into a job. So I would say it's better to have a job than no job, but you don't want to go into the job and undersell or oversell yourself, because you're not going to get the offer on either side. On one side, they're going to wonder why you're, you know, what's wrong with you. And on the other side, they're going to wonder, you know, why you're so greedy. And Nicole just put a no. Yes, I love that no, Nicole. Don't say negative things about other people that you've worked for, or companies. You can allude to things like, you know, it was so unfortunate. The company had a riff. They laid off 30% of the people. It was very unexpected, but oh yeah, I hated my manager. He was always like leaning over my shoulder, looking at the work I was doing. Okay, so they're gonna think, oh my, this person, I do not want to work with this person. If they hated their last manager, they're gonna hate me too. They're probably gonna hate everyone on my team. So yeah, you don't want to say negative things about people, about past, especially managers, especially the company. You can talk about things. Well, one of the things we really struggled with was this, but using words like hate, using words, you know, you just want to be careful there.
Got it. I think that's especially very pertinent to this current situation with all that's happening in the job market. We are at 7 p.m., which is top
Yep.
of the hour. I think Anita would be around for a few more minutes if you want to ask any questions, but as such, our session is done. Thank you so much, Anita, for facilitating this for all of us. I hope that helped all of you here, and feel free to stay back here. If you have any more questions, we would be happy to answer.
I'm happy to stay on. And Mary Lou asked if I could be hired. No, I can't be hired, but you know, I am open to sharing my phone number. And if you needed, if you wanted like a 15 or 30-minute coaching session, I'm happy to do it during the lunchtime or after hours or on a Sunday.